Okay, welcome to the Nebraska Tech Collaborative's Talent Builder Webinar Series. I'm Shauna Dorsey, and I'm here with members of UNL School of Computing team and also a member of the business community to talk about the philanthropic giving opportunity for companies who are interested in sponsoring a Capstone project. So as we kick it off here, as people join, we'll open up this Q&A or a chat for Q&A. And either way, the video will be available to folks to watch anytime after this and will be available on our YouTube channel. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to the UNL team to introduce themselves and then introduce our business partner, and we will take it from there.
Okay, good morning or good afternoon. I'm Chris Bone. I'm the UNL School of Computing's Assistant Director for Capstone, which means that I'm responsible for our senior design program.
My name is Bill Browning. I am a project manager within the Capstone, one of two that are on staff full time. My role is to help both the sponsor and the students navigate the trials of a project together and mentor both sides to get a successful project at the end.
Good afternoon. My name is Ryan Anderson. I'm the Director of Industry Relations for the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And my colleague who is part of the senior design team is not unavailable today, Kara Kugler-Wright. She and I support business development and contracting on behalf of the senior design program for the UNL School of Computing.
Okay. I suppose I should actually start sharing some slides here. There we go. And then we have an extra guest panelist here, Tess McKinney with University of Nebraska Medical Center. She's been involved in a few of our senior design projects, and she'll talk about some of her experiences in a bit. So let's start off by talking about what senior design is. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm responsible for our Capstone program, which fundamentally is the senior design program. We have a few other Capstone options for students who are in the second year of their Capstone, but for the most part, we're talking senior design, which is an opportunity for students to integrate their prior school experience and perhaps some internship experience to work on a real world project for a real world sponsor. So the School of Computing, it says here 3 majors. Starting in August, we'll actually have a 4th major, data science, but they won't be in senior design yet. So for this upcoming year, we're looking at 3 majors in our senior design program. So our computer science students and our computer engineering students, they each take 1 year of senior design, generally in their senior year. And then our software engineering majors, they actually take 2 years of Capstone. So in their junior year, they take senior design. And in their senior year, they take a 2nd year of Capstone, many of which do a 2nd year of senior design in a slightly different role. As I said, it provides students with an opportunity to integrate their prior experiences and learning into a real world project. A typical team is going to have 5 to 6 students who will be working on the project for 8 to 11 hours per week over the course of 2 semesters. As the educator here, I'm very focused on the benefit to the students, but as the assistant director for Capstone, I'm also concerned about the benefit to the project sponsors. So it is remarkably low cost. So for our external sponsors this year, we'll be charging $20,000 for the project, which, if you do the math on it, is a pretty good bargain compared to going off to a consultancy to get some work done. At the end of the project, the sponsors will own the intellectual property, so that we'll have an agreement between you and the University of Nebraska to sign over the intellectual property at the end of the project. It's an opportunity for you to get back to the community. So I like to think of the sponsors having 3 main interests, and they may not have all the same interests, but in general, we see 3 interests. There's some sponsors are really interested in the project. And if that's what you want, fantastic. You will get something out of this. Some sponsors see this as an opportunity to effectively do a 9-month interview of a half dozen students. And you may not end up hiring any of them, but it's an opportunity to look at them. And others just like to give back to the community, to help the tide rise, to lift all the boats, especially here in the Nebraska area. So, whichever of those you happen to be interested in, you will benefit from that. I mentioned the intellectual property, so just revisiting that for a moment. Our students will sign non-disclosure agreements. For those few students who choose not to sign a non-disclosure agreement, we'll put them on a faculty-sponsored project where intellectual property will stay within the university. But for our external sponsors, they'll sign over they'll sign a non-disclosure agreement and sign over the intellectual property at the end. We'll also have some industry coaches helping out. They won't be doing any of the actual work, but they'll providing advice and guidance, and they'll also be under an NDA for you. So to be a sponsor, as I mentioned, that $20,000 fee. Some sponsors choose to pay that all up front. Some choose to spread it out. We can work with you however you need that to be. There will also be a time commitment. So at a minimum, we would expect the sponsors to attend a sponsor meeting weekly. We say here an hour a week. It may not be quite that hour. And whether this is just one person, the product owner, attending the sponsor meeting, or several people attending, that's entirely up to you. Leading up to the project, we'll expect you to actually have an idea of what it is that you want. You don't have to have it, fully fleshed out. You just need a good, solid idea, and then be prepared to work with the students to refine those requirements. And then periodically throughout the year, we'll be asking for your opinion of how this team is doing. The faculty supervisors will provide the grading, but they do appreciate your thoughts on how the team is doing for you. So at this point, I'd like to turn this over to Bill, who will talk about how the teams are structured and how to have a successful project.
Thanks, Chris. This slide's a little busy, but it is a really important one to talk through about the team structure, not just on the student side, but also the sponsors and the stakeholders as well. So we're going to start in the top left-hand corner where you see student squad. Typically, we have 5 to 6 students on a team. And once they're formed, if they're a fall start, we start in August, the teams rank which projects they want to get on. And once we announce what teams they're on, they'll get together and start forming a leadership within the students. The 2 main roles that they decide on are the product manager and the dev manager, and each have specific roles. The product manager is generally responsible for requirements gathering and documentation, while the dev manager is responsible for the technology side, code reviews, making sure that code moves through the chain and gets deployed correctly. And then the rest of the students are the developers. An important feature between the product manager and dev manager, one of them will become the squad lead. The squad lead's additional role is generally communication. They're the ones that will be setting up the meetings. They're the ones that are going to send out the questions more often than not to the sponsor team. They're the point of contact for the student squad. To the top right, we have the sponsor team. Similar setup in that you could bring one-to-many stakeholders with you, but we ask that one, as Chris mentioned, become the product owner. And that's the person that's generally going to be at the weekly meetings and the one that the squad lead will communicate with the most. You have that one-to-one communication. That way we don't lose anything in translation. You're not getting requirements from multiple people that could cause issues or misunderstandings down the road. On the bottom section is the support. And this is really key because it shows how much the Capstone supports not just the student squad, but the sponsors as well. On the right-hand side of that box, you'll see the project manager, which I am one. The other project manager, Melanie Kugler-Wright, couldn't be here today, but we're 2 full-time project managers with years of industry experience leading projects like this. If you notice, we have 2 arrows. We have an arrow both to the student squad and to the sponsor team. And that's our role, is to make sure that both sides are getting what they need. that the students squad understands the processes that we're looking for. We're here to answer questions about process, anything that they may want to talk about behind the scenes. But we also want to support the sponsor team as much as possible, because we want this to be a mutual beneficial project for both sides. In the middle, you'll see the tribe lead. That's the faculty member that Chris mentioned that ultimately grades them. They are also a guide and mentor and have years, a lot of them in industry, mentoring these students, again, on process, maybe it's on technology, whatever our strong suit is. But so the project manager and the tribe lead will meet with them each week. We'll be in the sponsor meetings, and we often go to and talk with them during the week as well, to make sure everything's going okay. The third part of that support system is an interesting role of coach. This is a non-UNL, generally non-UNL, definitely non-Capstone industry expert. It's a volunteer from industry that is really the non-threatening aspect of this support, and is often the one that the students go to the most to ask questions, to throw ideas off of, or to get technology questions answered. The coach's role is a really cool one that we have. They always have fun with the students. They meet with them. They come to the sponsor meetings, but they often meet with them during their team times and outside. We'll often have them take them out to dinner and such. But there's a really strong bond that develops between the coach and that student squad. Next slide, please. So we've seen this structure. Here's the technologies that we use, and this is just a running list of things that we do. These are the common languages that we use and frameworks, but we're definitely not limited to these. In general, when we work with you during the summer to form your project and get an idea of what you're going to do, this sponsor team will often let us know what kind of technologies they want, especially if they have an IT shop in-house, right? Some companies have a specific language or framework that they always want to use. And we'll throw that out there in the project description. And the students that come to your project will more often than not be familiar with your technology. There are times though that the sponsor wants the students to choose. And that's something that the students often like. They want to be, sort of artists, choose what medium they want to use. So we're okay with that as well. We do our best to do training. If we're working on a technology that we don't know, we'll work with a sponsor to help train the students in those first few weeks of the project. Next slide, please. So we talked about types of technologies. Well, here's the types of projects we use. Again, it's a small list, and I think we had almost one of every one of these in our portfolio for the past year that just finished. We predominantly do the first couple, the web development, mobile app, but we're seeing a strong increase in virtual and augmented reality, progressive web apps, machine learning, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things. These are all up and coming technologies. Again, we generally we'll take any type of project as long as it fits within the School of Computing. And again, we'll train those students if needed on how to build. We also have a stack of hardware that we give that we can give out to students during the year to make sure they have the right laptops, VR equipment, etc. to work through the year. Next slide, please. Okay, so what makes a successful project? First and foremost, it's a strong sponsorship team. I think we found unequivocally that sponsors that come to meetings every week are engaged with the students, talk with them, as if they were their own, employees, not talk down to them. They're the ones that come out with a really strong project at the end. We also will work with you to kind of help scope what that project is, making sure that we're on the same page to get a realistic time frame. We do work in 9 months, and unlike a team that you would have in-house, we're sort of done at that 9 month, right? The students graduate, move on. We will, of course, welcome back for year 2 and 3. We've had a couple of those types of projects. I think Tess will talk about some, and we have an example of another one coming up. So we do have projects that come back year after year and just build upon and make it more successful for both sides. Some other things that we look for in a successful project are ideas that aren't on your critical path. So something that's not going to, if not 100% completed, won't interrupt your business day to day. Research and development projects, proof of concept type ideas. So projects in the beginning stages of an idea and you're trying to prove out that, hey, this could work or this technology could work. Something that we think about and we have a well-defined project goal at the end, right? Where we want to get to, we let the students know in August, here's where you're working towards, so we can make a plan through those 9 months. Next slide, please. So I mentioned one of those projects that come back to us year to year. DMSI is one of our industry sponsors who I think we just finished year 4 with. They are an excellent example of a sponsor that comes to meetings, willing to talk to the students, treating them as their own, while also meeting those 3 pillars that Chris mentioned earlier as to what the sponsors are looking to get out of the project. They come to us with multiple things. They come to us with R&D and proof of concept type projects. The one we did this year was a sort of a smart app to look at data and figure out what the best graphs that we can show the customers based off of the data file that we're given. What kind of charts that we can show them to see how they're doing. It was a proof of concept project that actually was extremely successful, and they're rolling it in and making it part of their larger ERP. Of the other 3, 2 are definitely in production. And one, at last I heard, they were finishing off a couple of extra requirements that they got, one that we finished in the previous year. So we're almost 4 for 4, getting work to them in production, which is a great success rate. So that's, obviously they come to us with, they have an idea and they want to get something done. But they also come as Chris mentioned, one long 9-month job interview. They have hired multiple students. In fact, the product owner of this year's team was a senior design student on one of their teams 3 years ago. So they see how the students come, they come to our showcase, they understand the School of Computing, and they love hiring our students. Next slide, please. So I talked to their VP of Research and Development, who's generally the product owner and executive sponsor on most of these projects. And these are some of the quotes that he gave as to why he keeps coming back year to year. And I talked a little bit about each one of these on that last slide. But here you can see that first quote, they talk about the program, how they love coming to senior design and supporting what is a great capstone project, and gives these students an opportunity to learn and fail at times in a safe environment. So when they get out into industry, they are that much stronger than their peers. In that second paragraph, I won't read it, but it talks about some of that advice that they would give. Something we talked about on what would make a successful project, clearly defining the lines of the project, the goals, and how we're going to get there. DMSI is not the only one. We have multiple sponsors that come back year after year, but they are a great example of not only how you can support the capstone, but how the capstone could then support business.
Okay. Thank you, Bill.
Thanks.
And now I'd like to turn things over to Tess McKinney, who has been on sponsor teams for, I think, 3 years. Is that right?
Yep, that's right. Thanks, Chris. So yeah, hi, I'm Tess McKinney, and I currently work for the UNMC Global Center for Health Security. I previously worked for UNMC's College of Nursing in Lincoln, and that's kind of where we started working with the UNL senior design team. I'll kind of go back 3 years. I've done 4 projects with them, and we just keep coming back for more, which is great. We really like senior design. Of the 4 projects, 2 of them are repeats, and then we did a new one with the new with the Global Center this last year. So Rollover Ranch, we actually did just a tractor safety. These are VR games. So the Rollover Ranch, the Nurses Escape, and then the Nurses Escape Heart of the Problem are all VR games, and they all run in the Oculus store. As you know, we kind of went along with this. Rollover Ranch has developed from just a tractor safety game to now a tractor ATV and electrical safety game. And so what we're actually doing with Rollover Ranch is we're shipping headsets through a grant that we got from the CA Cash agricultural grant to high schools in the state of Nebraska. So they went out to, I think, 52 high schools last year. That they had it for a week, and all three, well, two of these games and another game that another senior design group designed called Husker STEM were all sent on them. So it's kind of a cool experience because I just feel great that design students are helping younger students, and it's just been a hit. And then, like, as Nurses Escape, College of Nursing, we needed a way to kind of engage students, and we'd kind of been doing VR in my full-time job as for about 5-6 years. And we wanted to make a VR game that was fun and interactive to learn about sepsis and heart disease. And so these were two that we came up with, and we got the students to design it. And then my Global Center project this year was more on it was more of kind of an engineering feat and dealing with AWS systems and a website for infection prevention consultations. And while it is a prototype, I felt so bad this year because we kind of started out with this idea and we didn't really know what we wanted, but I knew I couldn't do it. And so it was really great to work with these students who either came up with new ideas or, sat down with me and kind of hashed out some of my ideas that I had no idea how to create. A little background about me. So I'm an instructional technologist in XR, VR, and AR in the full-time role. And then I also own a company called X Renegades that's it's kind of building up VR labs for healthcare systems or colleges and universities across the country. So I have a very wealth of understanding in the VR, AR kind of world, and knowing about some of this stuff, but not necessarily having the full potential and time to do it. And so, really bringing in these students to not only work with us and help us has just been, just a game changer and a very, very big time saver for me and for our teams at the university. And so, it's just so great when we work with these students. Like, I know 4 years ago, when we started working with them, we were like, oh, do we have time to get that hour? And it does sometimes turn into maybe 4 hours a week. I'd say 1 to 4 hours, just depending on who the project lead is for your sponsor team. But it's never been like oh man, I have to go to that meeting. It's always that, it's fun to go to, especially with like the VR games, we put the pictures in the VR games. So each group who was on the game, while they don't have the rights to the game, they're hanging in a picture somewhere within the game. So we always had this, kind of fun, interactive space where they could, be a part of the game. This last one, actually, they put us, the 3 sponsors who were mostly helping with it, they actually put our names in it. And so that was, kind of fun or whatever. And never would I have ever imagined that I would build VR games with students, and think it was such a cool idea or whatever. And so, I really like this project. And, as a industry, I would love in the future to be able to hire students who come out of this, kind of these either UNL's computer science engineering department or the senior design department. I'd love to be able to hire these students and see what they can do. And in the future, I'd like to do that. So while we're currently still, using them, and we will continue to use them, I'm sure, for another few years as far as simulations, as long as we can find federal or grant dollars, we're happy to continue working with them. I have a few things that I for sure want to bring up about as far as being a project sponsor. I absolutely love meeting with these kids in person. I think they really feel like you're part of that project, and that you really want to be there and like showing up on time. And I know like some sponsors are out of state. And so I know when I talked last year to some students, they were so excited because their project sponsor came from like Atlanta, Georgia, and they came to support them because they were building this project for them. It wasn't just like, oh, you made it for us and we're not going to show up. But another huge thing about this is these VR games are done so well that like we have the Nurses Escape one actually is in one of our accreditations, and you actually get a credit for it. And so it's done so well that we've had over 14,000 people download it in the last 3 years. So it's not just something that we just use with our nurses. Everyone around the world is using it. And so that's kind of a big thing for us. And the in-person thing, or actually go back. So as far as like the games, when we first went to, we went to a few companies and asked how much it would cost to take on these games, or for them to build these games. And we were quoted anywhere from $30,000 to $200,000. So, that $20,000 is not a huge cost for something that, potentially will make you money or save you money in the long run. Nurses Escape, we actually put it out there for free for the first 2 years. And now we're charging a very basic $9.99 just so that people can access it. And if you're a nurse, we give it away for you for free. Rollover Ranch, we have started charging for as well. But really those costs are just going to go back into a pot so that we can hire these students again. We just love the experience. It's just so much fun. I've never not had a good project. I also have a student actually this last year who wants to come back for their senior year and wants to be a part of us if we do it again, or when we do it again. And so, yeah, that's kind of, and I have another note, but I can't read it. But yeah, I'm happy to answer questions at the end. We love this, and it's such a good thing for our state. And I actually had a few people, in the philanthropic world who were looking for a place to go that would build a good VR game for them. And, I think they're going to sign up and do this. I've had other colleges that I work with on my personal side who are like, where did you, who did this for you? Did you do this? And I'm like, no, I don't have time to do this. But they're like, well, who did you get to do this? And can we utilize them? And I'm like, of course, anyone can utilize them. I've had some colleges actually start doing this themselves within their own university so that they, kind of have those avenues as far as building their own things and not having to pay, an exuberant amount or, but it's just so much cheaper than the world out there. I mean, if I go to a Unity programmer, they're expected to make, the $100 to $200 an hour, and it's just not worth, we just don't have those kind of funds, especially at the university. So, and we're, as far as the IP is in, we're actually taking that and, at some point we may come back to the students. It's a prototype right now, but we're taking it on, and, we're working with the CDC, and we're trying to, build something, and their piece in it will be just such a huge piece for us to get done. And yes, it took, half a year or whatever, but for us, it was okay because we were doing it at such a reduced cost, and it was helping us. So yeah, so I'm happy. I love UNL Senior Design. They're so nice, and all the kids are so interested in what they do because they get to pick kind of what they want to focus on for that year. And so they're really excited all the time to work on your projects. Chris, I don't know if you want me to add anything else or wait till the
That
question.
was great. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So if anyone here or looking at the recording later is interested, the next steps are first submit the project request, and I'll show you where to do that in just a moment. And so that just kind of begins the conversation where we'll, as Bill said, we'll work with you to massage the scope to make sure that it's not too much, not too little, right there in the Goldilocks zone. And then you'll provide a little more detail, and that'll become part of the statement of work and the agreement that we have between you and the university. We'll send that to you through DocuSign, and you'll be able to, put make changes as needed. But then we'll route it to you through DocuSign to sign off, and then we'll also want you to record what we call a pitch video. So between the project detailed project description and the pitch video, which is a short 5 to 10 minute video in which you talk about your project and try to convince students that yours is the project they want to be on. We'll provide those to the students in the first week of the semester, and they'll look through all 24, 25 projects. Well, in theory, they'll look through them all and use those to make their preferences known to us of what they want to work on. And then by we, I mean Bill, works slavishly over the weekend and matches up students to projects. And we have a little over half the students end up being on their number one choice. All told, almost every student is in their top 3 choices, maybe a few will be in their number 4 choice. But out of 24 projects, that really speaks to how well we can match students to something they're actually interested in, which of course will then benefit the project. So the place to actually sign up for a project is on our senior design website. So it's computing.unl.edu/senior-design. And optionally, you can then go to the sponsors page, but we actually have a link there on the main page as well. But if you go to the sponsors page, you'll see where you can get a little more information about what it's like to be a sponsor if you wish. But then there's also a link to request a project, fill out that project request form. And then, like I said, even on the main page, there's a link to the project request form, and you'll be able to fill that out and let us know that you're interested. We are also looking for some possible non-project sponsors. Problem with non-project sponsors is they usually don't have much in the way of funding. Even $20,000 can be difficult, which gives other people the opportunity then to help out those nonprofit sponsors. So Tess mentioned the one sponsor we had in Atlanta last year, and the 21 to 22 year, and they were sponsoring nonprofit. We've had other philanthropists sponsor nonprofits as well. Some directly, some sign up through the Senior Design Fund and the Lincoln Community Foundation to sponsor the projects. However you prefer to do it, we welcome that sponsorship. Now, I mentioned that the $20,000 might be difficult for a nonprofit sponsor. Sometimes it's even a little difficult for a for-profit sponsor. And fortunately, the state of Nebraska is willing to help out a little bit with that. And so I'm going to turn this over to Ryan.
Thanks, Chris. I'm sure that Tessa's words influenced your opinion about the value for the dollar, but as Chris said, the state of Nebraska has lent generously its Nebraska Academic R&D program, which is part of the Business Innovation Act legislation, to be able to offset either 50% or 75% of the cost of these projects. If a project would be oriented toward value-added agriculture, then that match from the state is more favorable, 4-to-1. And if it is for a non-value-added agriculture product, it would be a dollar for dollar match for a phase 1 up to $100,000. This is really a very light lift as far as grant proposals go. The company is the applicant, and once you would have a statement of work and then the draft agreement from UNL, the company can complete the online application, and I'll put a link to that in the chat. And most folks, I would say, could probably finish, once you have the statement of work, could probably finish the online application in a day or, a couple afternoons. It's very easy compared to federal or foundation funding. It is a reimbursement program. So after paying the university on the payment schedule that's outlined in the agreement, you would submit those proof of payments to the Department of Economic Development, and then they would reimburse the company for those expenditures. It's also a very efficient process. And in addition to the program officer, Ben Kuspa, making himself available for, upfront questions about eligibility, which is principally any business that has a person and an address in Nebraska. It does not need to be headquarters, and it doesn't matter the size of the company either. Once the proposal is submitted, it usually takes 2 weeks for it to be reviewed and then for you to get a response. The funding is available on the state's fiscal year, which is July 1st through June 30. So they've started accepting applications for the coming fiscal year. And so it's great timing for those companies that might have an interest in, working through their statement of work with the senior design team and then offsetting their cost through this competitive funding process. So yeah, I highly encourage you to go through the process. And if you're collaborating with the university, I'm available anytime to answer any questions about this grant program and how it works with the senior design program or any other way that you might want to collaborate with the university.
Okay, thank you. So at this point, I'm willing to entertain any questions.
Okay, let's take a look at the Q&A. I don't see any active questions in the chat, but we have a few guests on with us. So if you have any questions, please drop them in there. If not, as we mentioned, we will definitely be posting this on YouTube, and then folks can also, they'll have your contact info as part of the post in the content. I'm sorry, the content in the post, and we'll make sure that they know how to connect with you all. And I am not seeing any questions right now. Oh, no, not yet. Okay, sorry, Ryan, that was from you. And we'll include, Ryan just dropped something in the chat that we'll include in the post as well. Okay, there is one question. There are two. Okay, so the first question is, when is the application due and when is the grant application due? Does the grant have to come through first?
Okay, great question. So we'd like to have our portfolio lined up by the end of June. So if you can submit your project request by the end of the month, I would very much appreciate that. If we don't have them all by the end of June, we'll continue to accept project requests until our portfolio is full. And once it's full, we'll continue to accept project requests and build out a wait list. I'd like to have that wait list for a couple of reasons. One is, we have in the past had some sponsors drop out at the last minute. And so it's nice to have another sponsor who has a project all ready to go that we can then add to the portfolio. Also, the exact number of students we have in a given year is a little difficult to predict. My current prediction tells me that we'll need a total of 24 projects this year, and we're on pretty good track to get there. And in terms of the number of students who have actually signed up for senior design, we're also about right in that pocket. But we're also going to have, students sign up at the last minute. And so if we end up with enough students that we need 25 projects, I'd really like to be able to pull from a wait list. And I think the other question had to do with the BIA grant. So I'll let Ryan answer that.
Sure. Thanks, Chris. It's really as long as you're comfortable potentially paying for the project without the grant, the sequence doesn't really matter. However, the only thing that the DED does hold very firm on is that they will not fund work or a project where work has already commenced. So it is necessary for the grant application to be processed before the academic year starts. And if you have any more finer detailed questions related to the sequence and process, please email me or give me a call, and I'm glad to walk through that.
I see I'm muted. Okay, the second question, which was answered by Bill, but I'll repeat it here for folks who want to know. It says, I know the company owns the IP at the end of the project, but are there examples of things you've built or students have built? And then Bill shared a link as well, which we'll include later.
And if I'll go and as long as we don't have another question in the queue, I'll go and do a quick screen share here. So this is our senior design website, as I mentioned. So right here is that link to request a project, or here on the sponsor page. There's also the project request. But going back to the main page there, you'll see here our annual report from last year, which has all the projects that we had on the portfolio last year. We also have, go to the showcase videos link. We have the video presentations that the students made at our showcase back in May. And apparently the thumbnail images aren't going to pop up quite so readily. But you'll be able to go through and look at all those projects from last year. And if you go to the archives, then you'll be able to get to the year in review and the showcase videos for past years as well.
Thank you, Chris. Let's see, there's one more question in here. Ryan, can I get your contact info to talk to you more about the grant process? So we'll connect with Kristen to share her info with you, to share your info with her, Ryan.
Sounds good.
Okay. Oh, and it looks like you can type it on in there. I'm learning as I go here today. Any other questions? It looks like Ryan's taking care of this one. There are no new questions in here. But again, for those who are on the call, this will be available later. And then you can always follow up with the UNL School of Computing team with any follow-ups. So we appreciate everyone's time today. And any final words from the UNL team or from Tess?
I'd just like to thank you, Shauna and Grace, at the Nebraska Tech Collaborative for organizing this webinar. I really appreciate it.
You're happy to help.
Closing comment, just to build on something that Tess had to say about follow-on employment by some of the teams. And even though it hasn't necessarily worked out yet for Tess, in addition to those great deliverables that Chris spoke about in terms of foreground intellectual property that's created, software databases, et cetera, there's lots of stories of education to employment experiences from early stage startup companies to larger employers. You might have seen that Werner and ConAgra and Fiserv have all been sponsored, and there's many employees that are embedded at those different companies. around here that were led into those, maybe first an internship or a full-time job through the senior design process. And so this really is, in addition to an innovation solution, it's really an outstanding education to employment on-ramp.
And I'll just say, we actually had a student who worked on our first project whose dream it was to work for Unity, which is a huge thing in the VR world. And this was an opportunity because our project kind of went viral. He probably also had, connections or whatever, but because he worked on our project, he had something to show that had went viral and was huge. And so I think that really helped the students. And so, it may be someone's dream to work for ConAgra or somewhere here in the state and stay local, which is what we want. We want those tech students to stay local. That's what I want. I'm local. I will always be local, but I want those students to stay here or accomplish their dreams.
Yeah, and we want that too at the NTC. So perfect alignment there. Yes, well, thanks again, everybody. And we will be in touch with all the details following this recording. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. See ya.
Bye.